effectively in a university entrepreneurial ecosystem, which is the role of business school. I would like you to join me in welcoming Dr. Marie Thursby to the podium.
So this is a continuation of this morning, but we're switching to the role of the business school. Let me take you back to where we were. And this is a real challenge for educational institutions in terms of educating engineers and scientists so that they understand not only technical things, but business and legal factors that are important in commercialization of technology. And the challenge is gaining that knowledge without sacrificing their research. And so I would argue the way to do it is just organize the training around the research itself. And then you make the training experiential. So what I'm going to talk about is a program at Georgia Tech and Emory. It's been around since 2002. It was started with federal funding, a National Science Foundation grant. It's a team-based certificate program. It's 2 years. It's what you think of as an add-on program. All of the students keep working on their graduate degree. But all of the projects are done in the context of the PhD students' thesis research and issues involved in potential commercialization of that. This is one of our teams. The woman who's seated is the PhD student. The next two over are law students, and the last two on the other side of me are business students. So the idea behind the program is really simple. I mean, the program has a lot of moving parts, which is why I have white hair. I'm really only 30 years old. And the concept is that innovation, of course, requires technology. It requires science and engineering expertise. But at least as important are legal, economic, business, public policy issues. And actually, at least as important, it's not just that it's those issues, it's issues at the intersection of those disciplines. That's why it's such a difficult space. Okay, the people who operate in that space are people who have graduate degrees, and that explains the targeted students in this. So a JD student is a doctor of jurisprudence in the U.S. They come from Emory University. The business students come from Georgia Tech, and the PhDs in science and engineering come from Georgia Tech. And we've had almost any kind of PhD in the program, except we haven't had mathematicians. I've had astrophysicists, all sorts of things. The program goals are, there are two big goals. One is it's an educational program. The purpose of the program is not to commercialize the technology. That said, we have had some commercialized, okay? It's to produce graduates that really have a competitive edge when they hit the job market and throughout their careers. And we claim that entails for the technical students, understanding business and legal factors. For the MBAs, I think Bernie focused on this earlier. There's a real need, if they're going to manage high-tech companies, to understand something about technology and how to talk to a technologist. The last goal on this is a very important goal. It's one of the things that distinguishes this program from any other program in the world, really, to my knowledge. And it's what was responsible for getting National Science Foundation funding. It has a scientific goal, and that is to have the research that the PhD students doing have market relevance as well as technical relevance. So it has the potential of influencing the research. And you'll see when I go through the way the program's structured, what differentiates this program from any other technology entrepreneurship program is when they get in this program and they work on the issues in technology commercialization, the technology does not exist. They get in when they're starting their research. One view of this program is in terms of my stylized view of a doctoral program in science and engineering. By the way, I would argue you can apply this concept to undergraduates. You could certainly apply it to master's students, but I'm going to explain it in the terms it exists. Okay? Science and engineering programs today, I think almost anywhere, are team-based. They learn how to work in teams, but they learn how to work in teams with people just like them. Okay? Business and law programs, similar kind of thing. They work in teams, but they work in teams with people just like them. So what does the Tiger program do? Very early on, these students are recruited. They're put in 3 core classes that they take together. Okay, these are not law classes separate, business classes separate. These are 3 core innovation classes where they take the subject as a community. Early on in the program, they form teams. Each team in the program has a legal mentor and a business mentor. I actually have some postdocs in pediatric technologies, and they have clinical medical mentors. We have an advisory council that interacts with them, and what I want to come out of the end is graduates that hit the ground running. Okay, another view of what happens in this program is what I call an integrative research model. And this has to do with what I was saying, organize the training around the research itself. So what's up here at the moment is my stylized view of PhD research. You formulate hypotheses, you go on to proof of concept, and then prototype, depending on the student. And what you typically pay attention to are technical issues. If I'm successful in this, what's publication going to be like? What's the technical merit of this? How possible is it to do it? When you get to the prototype phase, for most of our students, these are experimental students, so it's testing and validation. And prototype is where you get to refinement and scale up. Okay? What happens in a Tiger team? Okay? They're in a team, and by the way, they don't totally separate the functions. If there's a legal issue investigated, they're all supposed to work on it. Somebody takes a leadership role, but they're all supposed to participate. So what happens here is very early on, when the hypotheses are being formulated, the team thinks about what markets might be affected. If you thought about a product or a service, who would be the customers? Okay, so you're thinking about that. Actually, if you think about it in terms of industry, when research projects get done, it's not blue sky research. Okay, the business has something in mind at the end. So this is much more akin to business research than blue sky university research. In the legal landscape, there are prior art searches, which is essentially finding out if someone's patented it before. And by the way, I've had students and very prominent advisors who found out that somebody at another university, because of this law student, not a literature search, that has already been done. And it's good that they find out early on, so they do something a little different. So as you move along the prototype stage, one of the things they pay attention to, still they haven't really invented something in the classic sense of an invention disclosure. But this is where they think about commercialization strategies. Is this something that if the student's successful would be the basis of a startup, or is it something Georgia Tech should just license? What would be the financing for this? In terms of intellectual property, that's where our students think about, is this something that can be patented? Should it be patented? Not everything needs to be patented or should be patented. Marks are very important. When you get to the prototype stage, this is where most technology entrepreneurship programs sit. Okay, some form of the technology exists, and this is where people think of doing business plans, so on and so forth. So it's really much more of a full-scale analysis. So what's unique about the Tiger program is they come in very early. So all three groups of students, the business student, the technical student, and the law student, are all apprised very early on of the types of things that need to be done very early. Okay? Okay, this is a snapshot of the curriculum. At the bottom is also a snapshot of when the students participate. If you go to the bottom first, PhDs can come up on when they hit the campus. They tend to come on in their second year when they've finished most of their coursework. They stay in my program for 2 years. Some graduate, some don't, depending on the student and the degree program when they get out of the program. MBAs we recruit when they're coming to campus because it's a 2-year degree. The JD is a 3-year degree in the U.S. and they're recruited after their first year. Okay, the 3 first classes coming from the left are the core classes. So what happens initially, we build the teams. We have a bunch of exercises and classes dealing with multidisciplinary teams. Early on, we address the issue of, suppose you've got a technology, so what? You need to identify entrepreneurial opportunities. There's intellectual property analysis that first semester, and they end up doing a preliminary market analysis or industry. A lot of the things in my program are platform technologies, so they pick, one application and they do an industry analysis around that. Second semester, we really hit customer discovery up front. Something that's been mentioned here but hasn't really been focused on, an absolute craze in the U.S., and it's not a bad thing. I think it's a little over-marketed, but it's not a bad thing, is who's going to buy whatever it is you want to sell. And believe me, they are not going to buy your technology. They could care less. But customer discovery is not finding one customer, okay? There's a program called iCore, and you do 100 interviews. And then once you do that, you do 100 more. And it may sound silly, but it's not. It really matters. Some of my most successful teams have changed what they focus on, and the buzzword's pivot, but I prefer to use change. 4 times before they get out of the program. And they've started companies after their 4th try. I even had a team of all males have their first try as doing makeup for women, and believe me, that went over real well. We go through early stage valuation, which is not a net present value analysis. It involves, we actually teach them Monte Carlo, building in uncertainty into this. Not quite as bad as flipping a coin, but close. Business model canvas, which is going through all of the pieces that you need, all of the types of resources you would need for a business plan. It's trying to get rid of the notion that a business plan is something carved in stone. You're trying to put together the elements to make a business. The last semester is a capstone. What they do depends on what happens with the research. Some of the projects turn into a business plan. They go to competitions. Some write SBIR grants, which are Small Business Innovation Research. That's close enough. Grants. I've even had teams write a case about why the technology and the team was a failure. And they do a second project for the incubator at Georgia Tech. The fourth semester is elective, and they do a variety of things depending on what they want to do. There are 5 students on a team in my program. This particular team won $80,000 last spring and summer. There's one PhD candidate. There are 2 MBA students. The theory is you have one that's technically oriented and one that's more soft. And in terms of JDs, the theory is one will focus on patent law, the other on technology law. The theory doesn't work in practice, but that's okay. The teams work well. We do team building exercises, Myers-Briggs type assessment. We don't use that to form the teams. Our teams are self-formed. My students describe it as speed dating. All the PhDs give presentations. Everybody has to go to them, and they select the teams. So Myers-Briggs is used so that you'll understand these people. What happens in this program, a few slides down the road, I'll show you what the most valuable part of the program is mid-semester, the first year, most of our teams hate each other, okay? And I say the reason is they're separated by a common language. Take the word research, okay? The PhD student thinks that research is experimentation. The MBA student thinks that it's looking up on a website something about a company and believing what the company said. And a JD student in the US only cares about the law that's the precedent. So they're all using the same word. They mean totally different things. So they have a few problems. But what happens is by second semester, some good things begin to happen. And by the end, you know, they come out stronger for it. As I said, we have team advisors, we have faculty advisors, all the teams have mentors. I have an advisory board with some angel investors. I have people from big companies, Dow, Hewlett Packard, now 2 companies, Monsanto. Twice a year, my advisory council gets together and the students present, and the advisors hear them present, and they chew them up and they spit them out, and they're much stronger for it. They have a lot of special opportunities in the program. I mentioned that 4th semester. For 3 years now, I've had international projects where some of them compete. I had a group that went to Ludwig Maximilian in Germany. They're put on teams with German students, and they do projects for German companies. I have a project with Copenhagen Business School. They go to business plan competitions and do quite well, by the way. Okay, since 2004, we've had close to 450 students. The numbers, if you try to impute logic to it, it's not going to work because we started out with 4 people on a team, we moved to 5. But essentially, there have been close to 100 technical students in the program. I've even had PhDs in economics and business who do their thesis research, some of them based on team data. If you look at the various fields, it's really mixed. Lots of electrical engineers, chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, material science and engineering has been very important recently, and a lot of biomedical engineers. I said it's an educational program, and it is, okay? But I think we've had pretty impressive numbers in terms of outcomes. Recently, we did a survey of the advisors who had students in the program, and we asked them for the project the Tiger students worked on. there was a list of outcomes, and we asked if they'd had that outcome or not. And this is a subset of the data. A GRA is a Georgia Research Alliance grant. SBIR is a federal grant for development of an invention. You have to have a business. So 20% of those who answered had gotten funding of that sort. These students do very, very basic research. So those numbers are pretty phenomenal. Companies formed is even wilder in some sense, 22%. Patents filed is not that odd at Georgia Tech, but it's a good number. Job opportunities, I'm not referring to they have great skills, so when they went through the regular process, they got a job. They got their job from the Tiger program, okay? Okay, we have had assessment all over the place, okay? If you're federally funded in the U.S., you're assessed, okay? Depending on the kind of student and the project, they have various answers, but uniformly they say the teamwork experience and in this multidisciplinary setting is the most important thing they get, okay? Okay, I don't know how easy this is to read, but I thought particularly given the conversation about working with Aramco and medium to large companies around, it would be worth putting it up. Essentially, the list of functions, if you will, on the left were given to us by our advisors early on, our industry advisors, in terms of things that students would need to know if they hit the commercialization space. So at the very top, we're thinking about things in terms of identifying market opportunity, knowledge of the overall commercialization process. It moves down to ability to communicate complex material, ability to work in an interdisciplinary team is the middle, and it moves on down. The red bars are people who ended up in startups, and the blue ones are those who were not in startups. So not surprisingly, the perceived benefit of these students was higher. For most of these things, and for most of them, there is a significant difference in startups. But the one that is important is ability to work in an interdisciplinary team. That, in fact, is more important if they do not go to a startup. And I think the difference is actually significant, but I wouldn't guarantee it. Okay, and that ends the formal presentation. Again, I told you it was an educational program, but these are some of our companies that have been formed. The one up here was the 4 students. At the time, the program only had 4 students on the team. It's a phenomenal team. The guy who looks pretty devilish on your left is pretty devilish. But he's Walter Voigt. He's a material scientist. He's on the faculty at UT Dallas. It's a going company, and it's a shape. His research was on shape memory polymers, and their original application was earbuds that are not uncomfortable. But I just saw him Friday, and they're starting a 3D printing business as an offshoot. And you know the little rook that all you 3D types use? Apparently, in some applications, it's important to have part of this printed thing flexible, and so they're going to do that. One of these teams has the one in the middle is with the bladder control device. The one on the other side is a cancer diagnostic, as is the one at the bottom. Oh, and the team down here, they're the ones who wanted to do makeup for women. They're a going concern, but believe me, that's not what they're doing.
So we do have 5 minutes of questions.
I can stand here.
So, when you say you recruit for the student, well, 2 questions. How many teams do you run through the program at a time? And how do you recruit these students?
Okay, there are, at the moment, there are 8 incoming teams each year. That translates into 70 people in the program at one time, because it's 2 years. How do we recruit? The PhDs, we have an information session. We typically have 50 or 60 people come to that session. We're pretty honest about what the program's like. So I'd say we only have 20 to 25 apply. They either decide that they're too early on, or, you know, their advisor's just not going to put up with it and they don't apply. An application consists of a nomination, 2 letters of recommendation, your transcript, an explanation of your thesis proposal, and an essay on why you think the program would benefit your career. We read those. We select 10 to 15 to interview. Oh, and for the last 2 years, we've required you to submit a video. And that really helps us pre-screening. And then we interview them and we make offers. The JD students, the law faculty does that process, but it's a similar kind of process. The MBAs we cherry pick. We look at the people Georgia Tech's recruiting, and they use the law program and the MBA program use Tiger to attract students. They're people, so the shortest fellow in the black coat here, Brent Duncan, came to Tech to get an MBA only because of Tiger, and he is the CEO of this company. A lot of our MBAs come, by the way, with PhDs. And actually the law student on the team in the middle, that team ended up, the PhD's research is a great success. It's won all sorts of prizes. It just does not have commercial potential, okay? But the JD has a PhD from Case Western and is an inventor on a patent that he wanted applied. So we worked with him to license it from Case. Anyway, that's a long answer to your question.
Thank you very much. It is excellent what you said for people who are working, because we got some of the experience of the other disciplines. Now, with those teams, is the idea here that they can stick together later on, because you have in one group 2 no people, okay? They cannot stick together with the others because maybe they invented something that needs more technology and less law. So what is the future plan of those groups? Are they going to stay together?
Oh, it's a great question. Some of them stay together. Most of them do not. Emory is a very expensive program, and law programs do not subsidize students. So they come out with so much debt that they need to go work for big law companies. Sometimes they will have equity, depending on what they've contributed, you know, to a project going forward. But for example, the middle team, all of them are sticking together, and they've actually, one of the interesting things is that MBAs, not so much law students, really overestimate their value. Don't, oh my Lord, this is on YouTube. Okay. I may need to come here to work. Do you have any openings? But so if they're going to form a company, how they, for a startup anyway, figuring out how you're going to split up the shares is a tricky issue. Particularly in our case, it's a tricky issue. So we try to get them outside advice And that's what that team's done. I hope that answers your question.
So one last question.
Oh, sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your lecture and for the organizers. My question is on the beginnings. In my view, entrepreneurship is a culture. I have an experience in the family. My nephew worked on an invention before he finished high school. He's now in the US on a scholarship. If we start early, we can have this culture of entrepreneurship early in life. In my personal experience, I started to make my own tools and fix things when I was young. I forgot exactly how young I was. I was very young at that time. I also subscribed to your school of, we're only that many years young, but all. So the question is, if we start this early, at a younger age, they have the time, they have the energy. Today, we live in a different environment. The internet opens opportunities to have those youngsters really move up the ladder very fast and very quickly. Uncle Google with YouTube is opening yet other channels that can help everyone, especially youngsters who have the time and the energy to learn fast. Can we map this experience from the other age, mature PhDs and so forth, to start early with simple projects at a younger age? And if yes, can we choose KPPM together with our own high school or school system to be the first experiment in that direction if this did not start yet? Thank you.
I think are you sure this is
Yes,
all?
someone just noticed. Good notice.
Okay. I would guess the answer is yes and yes, but I tend to be optimistic. You could certainly start young. I'm sure you could do this program for undergraduates. I think you could use something like this for high school experiences, but I absolutely agree with you. In fact, one of the interesting universities in the U.S. That you may want to look at, if you're thinking in these terms, is Rensselaer Polytechnic. They have been tremendously successful at the undergraduate level. In fact, they had one of the earliest successful incubators. I find it mind-boggling because I've spent the 3 longest years of my life in Syracuse. When GE let all sorts of engineers go in, what was it, the 70s, there were people who actually wanted to live in New York State, so they started companies. So that's a quick answer.